good. We'll call the order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. Please note that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the legislative chambers and also on the county websites, and that an automatic external defibrillator is available on the back wall of the legislative chamber. Please stand for the pledge. First item of business is to commence the Douglas County Board of Equalization meeting. Roll call.
Commissioner Borgeson. Commissioner Boyle. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Commissioner Friend. Here. Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers. Here. Mr. Chair.
Here. Our first items are A and B, A being the approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024, and B, which is a call for a meeting and set Tuesday, February 6, 2024 as date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Do I have a motion for approval?
Yeah, I made the motion.
Motion by Morgan, second by Rogers. Roll call, please.
And for those at home, the vote will not be appearing on the screen today, so I will announce the results. And the motion passes 7-0.
Next item of business is resolutions C through G. Was there anybody here to talk on any of these? Just double checking. If not, I'll take a motion to approve and also for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Morgan, second by Rogers. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
We'll now call the order the Douglas County Board of Commissioners meeting. Roll call.
Commissioner Borgeson. Commissioner Boyle. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Commissioner Friend. Commissioner Morgan.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers. Mr. Chair.
Here. First item of business are items 1A and B, A being the approval of minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024, and B, approval of the claims submitted for payment process through Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Motion by Morgan, second by Rogers. Please vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to consent agenda. I know there is a need for a small amendment to D1, which I'll cover shortly. Was there any other items that board members had on consent agenda? Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Just a couple of quick questions for the record.
Commissioner, hold on a second. Milford, can we get his mic on? Okay, there we go.
Okay? Okay. Just a couple of quick questions for the record. Item E, approval of license agreement for Douglas County's use of 80 parking spaces at OPPD's Energy Plaza parking garage. Just for the record, if somebody could talk about the cost of this and the use of these 80 parking spaces. Is there somebody could address that?
Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. I'll try to help a little bit. The cost is outlined on page 2 of the agreement in paragraph 1.6. It's a 3-year, 1-year lease at a time, but for over a course of 3 years. The cost for the first year is $72,000. The cost for year 2 will be $73,440, and the cost for year 3 will be $74,908.80.
And it's a 3-year contract
Yes.
with some renewal provisions?
Yes.
What are those?
So there's 3 years total, 1 year at a time.
Okay. And is there a escalator on the cost beyond the initial 3 years?
The contract isn't, there isn't more of a contract than the 3 years, so there's no escalator beyond the 3.
Okay, so the cost would be renegotiated at the,
Yes, should the board want to do another lease, they certainly could.
okay. And the use of these AD parking spaces?
I might have to defer to the department, but what's in the agreement, the users are defined on the very first page. In this second whereas, it talks about users for the secured spaces, and then we go on to page 2, and also there is paragraph 1.7 tells us that it will be for employees, interns, volunteers, and independent contractors for the Douglas County Youth and Family Support Center. Those are the defined users.
Thank you. So the new kids jail, basically, is what we're securing these AD parking stalls for. On item H, we have a resolution to amend the January 23rd, 2024 resolution requesting a permanent budget transfer of $53,000 to the Douglas County Garage for the Douglas County Justice Center rather than from the Douglas County Youth Center. That's an item, it was up before, which involves transport for children that we hold at the Douglas County Youth Center at 42nd Street to the downtown Juvenile Justice Center because the kids' jail is vacant and not open. Despite its completion, it's standing empty. Both of these.
1 minute.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The transport of food from 42nd Street to downtown, which is, as we all know, not open. So both of these are costs incurred as a result of the kids' jail, which has been plagued with problems and is over budget, over schedule, not open. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Cavanaugh. Anybody else on consent agenda? Otherwise, I'll explain the needed amendments that the clerk has explained to me. Mr. Clerk, I believe you had mentioned that in item D1, there's a need to amend that item to add All Billings Health Services Incorporated to the resolution. It was left out as a technical error. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda with that amendment included. So moved by Cavanaugh. Any seconds? Second by Boyle. Please vote.
Mr. Chair, I think there was audience member wanted to
On the
speak to.
consent agenda? All right.
Yeah, and Ken, real quick, that's actually not working today, so I'm sorry.
That's fine. Ken Anderson, Irvington, Nebraska.
And which consent agenda would you like to speak to?
Is it H?
2G2, it's the
2G2?
tort claim.
Okay.
You can talk if the chair feels that
This is
there is
from
power.
4 years
You can talk,
ago?
and you can't talk if you can't. You can talk about things on the agenda if we want to talk about an agenda, and you can talk things not on the agenda if we want you to talk about not on the agenda, or vice versa, all the time. The American Civil Liberties
Please
Union
start the time.
has submitted a letter, which I want to make part of this record, regarding this proposal of Commissioner Boyle's to further muzzle the public's input into this, and they conclude in opposition to this whole resolution. Finally, we note that the timing of this resolution is concerning. Recently, the public has been particularly engaged with significant policy issues pending before the body, including specifically juvenile justice issues. A new policy
Time.
limiting free speech in the midst of a
I'm keeping time
contentious
on my
debate
watch.
may appear to be viewpoint discrimination. The past practice of accepting citizens' comments has been working well. As such, we urge you to reject this resolution once again, because this is the same resolution that Commissioner Boyle brought to us some months ago, once again, and retain the tradition of open government in Douglas County. The overwhelming support for rejecting this amendment should be apparent to everybody. Certainly everybody on this board has received not only this communication from the Civil Liberties Union, but multiple communications from citizens regarding this further attempt to muzzle your right to exercise your constitutionally guaranteed free speech in front of this public board. We're supposed to work for you. We're supposed to listen to you. We're not supposed to tell you to shut up and sit down. That's what this is about. And going forward, hopefully we will get to the day when we have actual real rules that are invoked objectively all the time, and not this made up ad hoc as we go. We like you, we don't like you. We like what you say, you can talk. We don't like what you say, you can't talk. I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend your right to say it to the end. And that's what America's all about. That's what this discussion is all about. This resolution should be.
Word of explanation here, that was the original of last week's agenda item to remove the citizen comment. It happened 4 years ago. What I just played for you was said 4 years ago, and I thank you, Commissioner Kavanaugh, for saying that. Unanimously, the Board of Commissioners was against the item that they voted for just last week. There's a 180-degree switch of sentiment amongst the board. And so the question arises, can we trust you and for how long? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment on consent agenda items?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Which item are you speaking to?
I was there 4 years ago.
Which item are you speaking to on the consent agenda?
This item,
Okay.
the consent agenda. One other item on the consent agenda before you close that. But anyway, back to the tort claim. That's obviously the last citizens' comments that'll probably ever be allowed in this chambers unless the county attorney intercedes in this illegal matter. Now, I understand, Mr. Garcia, that you're new to the game, but you're obviously playing by somebody else's rule, maybe somebody that's a national association, a county's person, or a local chapter that has the office right across from the State House. You represent us. You don't represent national associations. I did invite the county attorney to show up today to enforce the Open Meetings Act. And then to close, I want to point out that in conjunction with your consent agenda today, the items that Mr. Kavanaugh pulled. There are associations and religious organizations that get tax exemptions, yet they are a hell of a lot more political than I am.
Larry, that's not related to the tort claim.
I submit this to you from the
Okay.
Nebraska
I'm
Criminal
gonna need you to
Justice
wrap that up.
Review,
It's not related to the tort claim.
available in the public library, and it's published by
Thank you,
Holy
Larry.
Name Society and whatever, and they
All right.
get tax exemptions.
Okay, Larry. Thank
This
you.
is more language than I have ever
Fantastic.
used,
Thank you. Appreciate
and
it.
it's against all your rules.
We'll take it. Thank you.
Luis Jimenez, 2709 Dewey Avenue,
On which item on the consent agenda?
E,
E? Okay.
the Omaha Public Power District Energy Plaza Parking Garage License Agreement. I reviewed the agreement, and I specifically want to talk about permitted use 1.7. Term 1.7. The parking garage shall be used by the Douglas County Youth and Facility Support Center employees, interns, volunteers, and independent contractors who have received security badging for the center, which are the users, for the purpose of vehicular parking and for no other purpose whatsoever. I think that I would like to see, and I think it would be productive and functional if the county, through these 3 years, also permits the use of the sheriff's department and corrections. It only stipulates that employees and such of the center will use it. You have 80 stalls, and I'm not going to get too much into what you understand that's going to transpire, but you have 80 stalls. You don't know if you're going to use all of them or if you need more. From my understand, March 1st is the beginning of the term, and the center isn't even open. So at that time, the majority of the users are going to be contractors, vendors, probably like people that are furnishing the space, not anybody who's providing programmatics. And I say that because I heard that you're probably not going to open up the youth center in March. So I think that 80 stalls is not enough. I think that you need more because you exclude the sheriff's department and correctional officers that can use this. I don't want to be off topic, but I been reviewing what I consider the district, right? The district, the area concerning your facilities.
Keep it to parking, please.
Downtown.
The OPPD contract.
Yeah, the parking facilities, the district for those things. And you have 2 available parking stalls, garages. The county owns one. OPPD owns one. So I think that you should also explain to the public and the users that this is short term, that this is temporary, and you're going to either need a new parking garage for the county, which could house everyone. The employees for the youth center, corrections employees, and sheriff's department employees. Like, this is coming forward, and I think you need a more strategic plan for what you're doing today.
Thank you. All right, going back to the consent agenda as amended. Seeing nothing else, we'll do a vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, presentation. All items under presentation A through C are essentially one large comprehensive presentation. We're going to hear about a few different bills that tentatively we could support, some we could potentially oppose, and an overall legislative update from Marcos, and I think potentially a little bit from Sean as well, the county's lobbyist. So, Marcos, are you going to kick us off today? All right.
All right. Marcos C. Martin, Douglas County Administration. And I believe, yeah, Mr. Kelly is on the line there in case there are any questions from commissioners. So, commissioners, there are 2 items in front of you, or 2 resolutions in front of you with containing a number of bills. There are 7 bills on the support list, and there are 4 bills on the opposed list. And both sets have been vetted by Mr. Kelly and myself and the chair, and that's what we are bringing to the board as our initial recommendation for the second session of the 108th, which you all know is going on right now. And, you know, the number of bills down there, I believe they're into the 1400s now. So this is just a very small snapshot or, you know, capture of those, of the bills that are pending. So I will just go down the list if that's helpful. And if there are questions on those bills, I'll start in numerical order on the support ones. If you have questions, just interrupt me. But here's a little bit of background on those bills. I'll be super fast. LB 869. 869 was introduced by Senator Bostar, change provisions relating to services of the county veteran service committees. That is in the government committee. It has not been scheduled yet for hearing. This bill was actually introduced per NACO's request, NACO Nebraska, so this was filed on their behalf, and that is the reason why we're bringing it. We often, you know, we attempt to work with our partners as close as we can down in Lincoln, and that's a reason why many of these are, you know, you will see them listed as support because NACO has had the bill filed on their behalf. The text allows counties a little bit broader scope of service. It allows a broader scope of services for veterans rather than the standard definition of a veteran that's in the statutes right now is a veteran that served during war or a period of war. This eliminates that term where it's essentially just says veteran. You're a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, and this has been vetted and reviewed by Mr. Elmore. He's our Veteran Services Director, and he's in support of the bill. That's LB 869 by Senator Bostar. LB 938, Senator Brandt, change provisions relating to the County Purchasing Act. Government committee, it's been assigned to government committee. A hearing has already passed. That was on January 25th. However, again, this is a bill that NACO Nebraska requested to be filed on their behalf, and so it changes some. It makes some text updates to the parameters or dollar thresholds in the County Purchasing Act, which is helpful that those increases are phased over time. And Mr. Carlson, our purchasing director, has reviewed and is support of LB 938. Again, NACO's in support. This is a bill that was filed on their behalf by Senator Brandt. That's LB 938. LB 959, require transfer of cases to juvenile court if a county or district court fails to rule on a motion to transfer within 30 days. This bill has been assigned to the Judiciary Committee. That's where it currently sits. A hearing did occur on January 24th. What I will say is that this particular bill for support was brought by Ms. Habakati. She's Deputy County Administrator. And essentially, the bill just requires courts to transfer cases to juvenile court if they fail to rule on a motion to transfer to the court within 30 days. So in a nutshell, the benefit of this change is to move cases faster for youth that are charged in adult court. Some of those youth, and Ms. Habakati is here to answer questions, but some of those youth will actually sit for a number of months for the district court to rule rather than having a more expedient transfer requirement by the district court into juvenile court. NACO has no position on this. I'm happy to note that for the commissioners if that's useful. Again, that's LB 959, filed by Senator Dungan, if I didn't state that earlier. LB 1087, this is by Senator Jacobson, adopt the Hospital Quality Assurance and Access Assessment Act. This bill is in the Health and Human Services Committee. A hearing is scheduled for February 2nd on the bill. This bill was brought to us as a recommendation by Mr. Kelly and essentially creates a partnership between Nebraska hospitals and the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services to preserve healthcare services in Nebraska. It actually provides for a net increase in federal Medicaid services, which it would benefit the Douglas County Health Center. So this is a reason why it's being brought to this board for support. And again, a recommendation by Mr. Kelly. NACO has no position at this point on the bill. And again, that is LB 1087, filed by Senator Jacobson. Last three bills on the support list, LB 1093 was filed by Senator Bostar. Provide for limited law enforcement officer certificates and change provisions relating to tuition waiver under the First Responder Recruitment and Retention Act. This board may recall back in 2022, LB 1273 created text for law enforcement officers to receive an education tuition waiver. This would expand that education tuition waiver program. And so what it does is that expands for first responders, full-time rural and suburban fire protection district firefighters. This bill is a NACO watch bill. It was added to this list per the request of the chair. And again, that is LB 1093, Senator Bostar. My last two support bills, LB 1157, 1157, was filed by Senator McKinney. Require hearings regarding juveniles in detention in certain counties and require payment of certain costs by the Office of Probation Administration. As we understand, this bill only applies to Douglas County. A recommendation for support was brought by Ms. Havakati. Oh, I guess I skipped over the other. This has actually been filed in the, or is being held right now in the Judiciary Committee. Hearing is to be scheduled, and it would be beneficial for the county if LB 1157 passed. Essentially, if a juvenile has spent 14 days in juvenile detention facility as a result of a probation violation or lack of placement in the community, the juvenile shall, within 24 hours, personally appear before a court for a hearing. And NACO has no position yet on this bill. However, we read the bill to be beneficial to the county. Again, recommendation was brought by Ms. Havakati. It's 1157, filed by Senator McKinney. And the last bill that I have for support is LB 1339 by Senator Brewer, change provisions relating to possession of firearms in schools and authorize schools to provide emergency response mapping data to public safety agencies. This has been assigned to the Education Committee. A hearing on it will be February 6th. And this bill was actually on the DCSO's support list, and so it was presented to the chair, and so added to our list. And it does a number of things. The sheriff is in support of it. As we understand, it removed certain limitations of who can carry a firearm at a school or on school grounds, allows qualified law enforcement officers to carry firearms when off duty, and persons who are acting as security for the school and in accordance with written policy adopted by the school. It also has some mapping requirements that has to essentially comply with 911 standards, and that in particular needs, I believe, needs certain. We have some recommendations from our GIS department that may be recommended at the committee level to improve the bill, improve the text of the bill. NACO has a conditional support on 1339. And again, that was filed by Senator Brewer. And Chairman, those are the support bills that I have listed.
Let's briefly do the opposed, since there's only 4 of them, and we'll wrap up the report.
Sure. The opposed list, 4 bills. LB 1067, this was filed by Senator Clements. This is a priority bill. This is the one priority bill that you will see appearing on our lists. It also, to note, currently has 25 or so co-sponsors. This eliminates the inheritance tax, adopts the State Prisoner Reimbursement Act, and changes the authorized uses of certain county funds. It is assigned to the Revenue Committee. The hearing date has not been scheduled yet. The recommendation to oppose this bill comes from the chair. This particular legislation, it will be detrimental to counties as far as the elimination of the inheritance tax. Part 1, essentially, I'll explain it in 3 parts. Part 1, this bill provides a schedule to phase out the inheritance tax gradually through 2028. 2028 is the full elimination of it. Part 2, there is a State Prisoner Reimbursement Act in which, after sentencing and prior to placement at the Department of Corrections at the state level, the state is going to reimburse counties. I believe there's an amendment for $40 a day. It shows in your notes $35 a day, unless or up until the point that the fund that's been allocated for this purpose is exhausted, which is, according to the bill, it states $3.9 million. And then Part 3, this revises the Visitors Improvement Fund, Visitors Promotion Fund use for the board, in which a county board can determine how they wish to use Visitor Improvement Fund dollars. if they wish to use it for other purposes than what is stated in the current statute. So 3 parts of that bill. NACO is in strong opposition to this, as it would eliminate the inheritance tax, phase it out by the end of 2028. And that is a priority bill, LB 1067, filed by Senator Clements. The next bill is LB 1208. It has been filed by Senator Bozen, allow for detention of juveniles under the Nebraska Juvenile Code for their own protection. This has been assigned to the Judiciary Committee. There's a hearing pending. It has not been scheduled. This recommendation for opposition has been brought by Ms. Havakati in County Administration. It adds authority to detain a juvenile if it is a matter of immediate and urgent necessity for the protection of the juvenile. This bill could impact the number of youth in detention. It could increase the number. That's what we anticipate, that this could increase the number of youth in detention. The ability to detain juveniles, including detention of such juvenile, is a matter of immediate and urgent necessity for the protection of the juvenile. That's the exact language in the bill. And it is a NACO watch bill. Again, that is LB 1208, filed by Senator Bozen and recommended for opposition by the county.
Commissioners, Patrick Bloomingdale, County Administrator. I just want to add something really quick to that. In that bill, it also says that that when they put those kids in there for their own protection, it also talks about their ability to treat or rehabilitate such individual, except as necessary under Section 5A2 of this section. And that's really not the objective of a youth detention center. It's to keep them safe and provide them with, the necessary medical or education while their adjudication is pending, not for treatment and rehabilitation purposes. That's what a treatment and rehabilitation center is for. Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, my last 2 bills for opposition. I have LB 1211, 1211. That has been filed by Senator Hansen. Changes the provisions of the Election Act relating to early voting. It's been assigned to the Government Committee, and hearing is still to be determined. This particular bill was brought as a recommendation for opposition by Commissioner Cruz and Mr. Kelly. And basically, the bill will shorten the length of days for early voting from 35 days down to 22 days. This would result in an increased cost to Commissioner Cruz's office, for example, and obviously across the state. This particular bill, 1211, is being opposed by NACO. And the very last bill that I have for opposition is LB 1241. It's been filed by Senator Von Gillern. It changes provisions relating to property tax limits. It's been assigned to the Revenue Committee. There is a hearing scheduled for January 31st, tomorrow. And the bill's been brought as recommendation for opposition by Mr. Kelly. The bill will require a county's levy to be reduced by the percentage, the same valuation percentage increase in any given year. So basically, the bill creates an additional levy limit if a total taxable value exceeds a total taxable value from the prior year. So your levy rate would then be decreased by whatever that valuation increase is. So NACO is in opposition to this bill. Again, that was filed by, that's LB 1241, 1241. And that's it.
Thank you, Marcos. Was
Thank
there
you, Chairman.
anything from Mr. Kelly that he wanted to add to the overall legislative report before we take comments and questions? And Mr. Kelly, just a quick second. We're having some audio issues today, so it's possible that we may not hear you too well. And if that's the case, we may be limited in commentary from Zoom. So let's try it real quick, and I'll let you know. It's very limited. There's no way to put. Okay, it's not going through the sound system. So we if you want to text Marcos something that he can say on the microphone. Otherwise, we'll jump to comments and questions, and then I'll check with Marcos to see if you sent him any messages that you want to share with the board and the public.
Commissioner Rogers, Chair Rogers, Marcos could put him on speaker and hold him up to the microphone. if you
Okay.
wanna do that, if
Thank
that's
you for
acceptable.
that creativity.
Yep, okay, here, I'm gonna put you on speaker.
Okay, I'm gonna walk away from my computer here. I was
Sean,
just
can you
gonna
hear?
note
Okay.
the general resolution per bills introduced at the governor's request limiting property tax authority for political subdivisions. That's somewhat of a moving target, so just a general opposition resolution would be advisable just to be flexible in managing our opposition, throughout the legislative session, because the legislative bill vehicles could change really on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and so, Mr. Kelly, I did note for the board in that fourth whereas clause in that resolution. I did not say this morning. I sent an email earlier.
Okay.
But it was to note that there is a general opposition clause for bills of that type, property, levy restrictions and et cetera. So that's the fourth whereas in the opposition resolution shown in their agenda.
Perfect. I have nothing further to add.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We'll go ahead and jump into comments and questions. We'll go down the row here, Kavanaugh, Boyle, and then Borgeson, starting with Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. And thanks for this, Sean and Marcos. A couple quick overall questions. These items that have an impact, a fiscal impact on Douglas County, and I know that sometimes the fiscal notes don't catch up with the bills for a little while, but for instance, the big item on this entire list is LB 1067 to eliminate the inheritance tax. Do we have a estimated fiscal impact on Douglas County of that bill?
Commissioner, so we are actually working on that. Oh, is that fine, Chair? Okay, through the chair. We are working on a fiscal impact note for LB 1067. What I will note is that, because, it does have that second part there where there's some state prisoner reimbursement potential. What I will say, though, a complete elimination of the inheritance tax, I will have Lori, well, maybe I don't want to speculate, but from any given year, am I correct to be between 12 and?
I think the average over the last, I think it was 10 years that I looked at, was 15.7 million.
Okay.
Okay.
Per year.
Per year.
Of a loss of the inheritance tax. So, and that would be phased out little by little through the end of 2028 to be completely eliminated for all decedents after January 1st, a decedent after January 1st, 2028.
Yeah, that's a huge negative impact. And there's nothing that really makes up for that in terms of state aid to the counties in any of the bills that we've seen so far. Nothing that would substitute 15.7 on average state aid to the counties.
You are correct, yes.
Okay. So obviously that would be a very, very high priority for us, and it would be a really bad fiscal impact on Douglas County if that were to occur. The other question I have is a few of these bills we have positions on, but the hearing's already taken place, and I'm just wondering procedurally, did we provisionally go to those hearings and testify in favor or opposed, or do we subsequently submit to the legislators our position?
Yes, Commissioner, good question. We will subsequently send in a letter to that committee in support of that particular bill. A handful of them in which the hearing has already occurred, they were NACO bills, so we do know NACO appeared. And so, like I said earlier, we're just kind of, some of those bills, we try to support our partners in the legislative process.
1 minute.
NACO.
Okay. The others that have fiscal impact on particularly bills that we support, like LB 1157, and I think it is LB maybe 959. These are both juvenile justice bills that have to do with where the kids are being held and when they're being held and when they're being transferred from one court to another. Do we have fiscal impacts on either of those, 1157 or 959, yet?
No, Commissioner. I do not have a fiscal impact on LB 959 or LB 1157. I do not anticipate that there is a negative fiscal impact to the county on those bills. I will have Ms. Havakati correct me if I'm wrong. And we generally turn in notes, fiscal impact notes, when there is a negative impact to the county.
Time.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, and I appreciate your update and the work that you're doing on this going
Thank you.
forward. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. We'll jump to Commissioner Boyle.
Thank you. First of all, on LB 959, requiring the transfer of cases to juvenile court if a county or district court fails to rule on a motion to transfer within 30 days. Does this mean that that potentially juveniles with significant charges that should be seen in adult court could be going to juvenile court instead?
It is possible, but what this bill basically
Kim,
does.
can you identify yourself,
Oh,
please?
sorry, Kim Havakati, Deputy County Administrator. Under the statute that is in question here, there are specific time periods as to when that motion has to be filed from district court to try to transfer it to juvenile court, when the hearing has to be held. There was no specific date. Well, I take that back. The statute does say that court has to make a decision within 30 days of the hearing on whether the case is transferred to juvenile court or not. What the data has shown from especially the three biggest counties is judges are sitting on those cases for a lot longer than 30 days, sometimes 5-6 months, instead of either make a decision to transfer or keep it in district court. So what this statute would do is say, Judge, if you're not going to make your decision after that hearing within 30 days, it's going to automatically be transferred. I think the thought process was make your decision so that the youth knows what's going on, and if not, then it's going to be transferred.
I think my only concern would be that someone who's committed a serious crime could be in juvenile court instead of adult court. So that does concern me as far as that goes.
And Commissioner, that might be possible, but again, it's all within the judge's authority to just make the decision then, and it would take care of it.
Commissioner Boyle.
Yep.
Commissioner Rogers would like to comment to that comment. Would you be okay with that?
Please, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to say, Commissioner Boyle, I mean, I think your concern is this is more the process of if the court makes a decision that a kid should be transferred, they need to go ahead and do it at a rate. I don't think this is a question of if a kid has an offense, they would be transferred, because the question is, if they had that and they didn't think they should be transferred, they wouldn't. The whole issue here is the amount of time that they are sitting. And there is a reasonable line that you can draw to the fact of the physical impact, because the fact is, the longer they stay there, the longer they're there in time in the facility, and even though there's a cost paid to us, we know that it's not to the market value that it costs. So there is an implication of cost that we're taking for that. But I don't see this as a threat to any safety or transferring, because that's the judge's decision. The fact is, they're waiting and they're letting those kids linger instead of making that call. And for years, 2 years ago, we tried to sit down with the jurisdictions and just establish a system, like a color code for these kids that are juvenile that needs to be there. And so there's some work that's been done before to try to work within cooperation to try to do this without doing it statutorily. And now this is where you've come to the point with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And then a couple others on the LB, so this is in the resolutions to oppose. The LB 1067, the inheritance tax, what % of our budget does the inheritance tax cover? So we said it's, what, $15 million a year out of how much for the whole budget?
It varies every year.
Yeah, I mean, roughly, just so folks know what a chunk this is.
Well, of the overall.
Lori, can you identify yourself,
Oh,
please?
sorry, Lori Persh, Director of Finance. The overall budget is about 500 million. So but that includes things like roads, and so of the general fund, it's a significantly more meaningful number.
And then as far as, right now, we're using inheritance tax mostly for things like Douglas County Health Center, general assistance.
Yes.
So these are pretty critical items where we, as Douglas County or the entity, we're trying to support our mission, which is to take care of the indigent or those who need, like this, the sickest of the sick. So we would have to figure out ways to get funding otherwise from other sources. So are there, that in addition to the 1241 changing provisions related to property tax levy limits, with those, we're going to see, I think, a pretty big hit to the budget. And I think, I think about things like, we certainly could try to keep our budget neutral every year, but the hard part about that is we have other departments like the sheriff's office asking for a raise for their deputies, which would be valid. What do we do to accommodate those raises? So that's the hard part about making it a net zero budget, is every year the unions and different employees come back with raises, and that seems to be where most of our budget issues tend to feel the hit. Really, it has to do with negotiating salaries and how do we pay the employees what they deserve, and how do we keep Douglas County solvent with that. That's probably the biggest chunk. Knowing that Douglas County only takes 13% of property tax revenue as well, most of it going to the city and the schools. So I guess I'm kind of going off a little bit just to say we can certainly limit property taxes, but Douglas County, the entity, doesn't have any other revenue source. So if we if this all passes, if these bills pass and we see a big hit to the Douglas County revenue, is there an option at some point to think of another revenue source we can cover things like raises to our county employees? Do you know if there's
Time. We'll jump to Commissioner Borgerson.
Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the support, my understanding is LB 1093, while I'm generally in support of it, we also have the Corrections Entity Association that is going to be trying to be added to this, and I just want to make sure that the costs stay with the state fund, not shoved down to the counties to pick that up if that were to happen. But again, support, but want to make sure that they don't slip in that counties have to pay for this. And then I would ask that LB 1339 be pulled and taken separately. And on the 1067, Commissioner Boyle, we haven't got a good form of complete revenue replacement. They aren't willing at this point to put that in there. The jail reimbursement at $35 a day, that was a figure that wasn't even complete back in '98 when it started. And what happened was they appropriated a certain amount of money, and the money was gone after the first quarter and sometimes before, depending on populations of your jail, but it never covered the cost. And so while, I appreciate that, I think they're throwing us a bone. It's a bone that isn't even close to the full revenue replacement that needs to take place. And then I think it's a really, really, really bad idea that tourism dollars be used for the makeup of the elimination of the inheritance tax, and you would have the whole tourist industry, I think, up in arms about that, but I don't think that's appropriate anyway. And then, what was it? Oh, the inheritance tax. I did want to mention a few things that in Douglas County, our average we have 605,000 people, and we have an average of about, for a 3-year average of about 1,453 people that this affects, which equates to 0.24% of our population. And to make up that amount, the property tax levy would have to be increased by 2.6 cents, or 9%. And so again, if you're eliminating something, and I'm fine with eliminating the inheritance tax, it's not like we're in love with the inheritance tax, but if there's no revenue replacement, then all bets are off the table. You know, they talk about tightening your belt. Well, that's unrealistic for the purposes and the things that we have to provide in service and programming for Douglas County residents. And so, again, it's a big hit, and they need to talk a little bit more seriously about that full revenue replacement for the
30
elimination of the inheritance tax. And I'll come back around if I have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll jump to Commissioner Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The deja vu. Last few years that I've been here, I'm not going to repeat. This is it's what we get paid for. It's a difficult, but sometimes a perilous proposition, even though it's appropriate. And I would say here's why. The good news at this point, at least when I went through these bills this weekend, and when I've done my cursory view of them, the good news for a person like me at this particular point, and Commissioner Borgeson made some really, really good points. I'll piggyback on those. My reading of the seven bills that this board has in front of us right now to support, based on my cursory reading, I could generally, my guess would be at this point, generally support 5 of those. I would also propose changes to language in almost every one of those bills. Now, even the 5 that I generally, remember, even the 5 that I generally support, I would propose changes to those. Of course, that's not my job, and that's not within my purview. I don't do that. Used to, but I don't now. In regard to the opposition bills, I'm torn on each and every one. I read them this weekend. I saw benefits, and I saw potential peril in each and every one. The devil is in the details. These bills, if they get to general file, if they actually come out of committee and they get to general file, and then somebody moves them to select file, and then the organization and the group of people move them to final reading, these things are going to take a totally different look. At least the 4 that we're opposing are not going to look like what they look like now. So we're going to end up, just so we're clear, we're going to end up making a decision, and these bills aren't going to look anything like these. I have a little bit of an issue with that. I'm not committing myself to anything. I like I said, I could go either way on a few of them that we're supporting, and right now I'm looking with question marks at each and every one of the bills that we have in opposition. I guess finally, it's safe to say that many of these have an impact on how we do both mandated and non-mandated services, how we fund them. They have an impact. And I've said this before, if these bills that are being proposed that directly affect our property tax code in the existing current form that they're in, if these bills that have a property tax code impact are passed and signed into law by the governor, I would submit to you, and this is where Commissioner Borgeson was going, and she's absolutely right. I would submit to you that we are staring at analyzing and cutting where we have to cut, and those are non-mandated services. Now, everybody do the math. I've said this before, 22 non-mandated services. There's about 3 of them that are high-ticket items. Do I have to say in public what those are? I can, and I will, as we go further down this road.
30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But we're going to. We have to. There's no other choice. So I don't want to abstain on, I would follow Commissioner Borgeson's idea. I would like to debate every one of these. I don't know if we have time. I don't know if the board wants to do that, but we could do it. And when we do, it's going to get ugly. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Friend. All right, I'll take a quick round to go into a couple of these real quick. Regarding LB 1093, it's a valid question in regards to who would cover the expansion of the tuition reimbursements. It is my understanding that it would remain with the state, though I'm going to double check on that. Marcos, do you recall where the current bill lies in that regard?
It's, Commissioner, as I recall, LB 1093, that the cost, yes, remains with the state as far as the text in there. So yes.
Okay.
State cost. Now, I have not seen an amendment otherwise.
Yeah.
Say.
Got it. And that is how I'm currently supporting it and would agree with the sentiment there. In regards to LB 1339, what attracted me to this bill was its emphasis on communication with the school system, between law enforcement and the school system, mapping things out in regards to security planning, and making sure that we are optimizing that communication in case of any kind of need that law enforcement needs to address something that's going on in the school system. So that's the part that attracted me. I must admit that I missed the part where an expansion of firearms would be expanded upon within the school district, and so that is my mistake there. So I'm going to seek clarification on that myself. Marcos, could you help me understand what kind of expansion is going on in that bill in that regard?
Commissioners, as far as I understand the bill, it does remove the limitations of who can carry a firearm at the school. So a qualified law enforcement officer off duty can carry a firearm, and then persons who are acting as security for the school and in accordance with the school policies. I am happy to find some additional information. I can even pull the bill text and look at it even closer. But as I understand, that's how I understand the bill to be. Got it. Stated right now.
Thank you, Marcos. And so I heard a request to pull that one off for now and potentially vote on it separately, or another option could be just as a starting set of support and oppose. That would be great as well, but I will defer to how the board feels about how we should take these. So I'll stop there for my first round, and if there's no other board comments, we'll jump to public commentary. Oh, sorry, didn't see you. Jim, and then we'll go to public.
I think, a couple things, and I appreciate what everybody said regarding this. First off, I think it's imperative that we get an early start in direct opposition to LB 1067, which could have an estimated impact of $15.7 million based on the average going back a few years. That should be a quick call, and I would make the motion to take a position in opposition to that. That's a dangerous bill to the fiscal well-being of Douglas County, and we have our work cut out for us to stop that one. Relative to the rest of these, and I think, the issues that have been raised by my colleagues are valid, we certainly could discuss this at length in a legislative committee context and come back to the board with this. I just think that LB 1067 is such a clear and present danger to our fiscal well-being that it would be really good if we took a position today on that and gave our representatives the authority to go forward. I also think that some of the bills that Ms. Havakati has come forward with probably are, they're coming from our own administration, and they're probably valid concerns of the board as well. But 1067 is, the number one on the hit parade, I think, here today.
Yeah.
So I'd make that motion.
Okay. So that's a current motion on the table to At an individual level, oppose LB 1067. Procedurally, I have to see if there's a second to that motion.
You can second it.
Otherwise, we'll jump back to the big debate and come back to how we want to address them. Yep. All right, Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Kavanaugh makes an interesting point, and a lighthearted note. Jim and I never used to debate. He'd be telling me how to vote, and then I either would do it or not do it. 90% of the time, I wouldn't do it. No, I'm kidding. I don't know what those numbers are. We debate now. 1067 is an interesting beast. It's been happening for, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Borgeson, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Morgan, others, even Commissioner Kavanaugh, correct me if I'm wrong, they have been driving this bus for a long time. For 30 years, I just heard. And I remember it. And the reason that they've been driving this bus is that I'm put in a position now where I've seen it from just about every different angle. I've seen it from, I'm not rich. I don't know if I should pass away, I get hit by a bus this afternoon, it doesn't affect my family. It affects such a small amount of people that we're selectively choosing. 1067 is not a big picture policy item in regard to tax policy. It's very small, but it's a huge amount. So this isn't changing tax code. 1067 actually picks a bunch of winners, and it says, we're going to get it. We're going to continue to get it. Now, that being said, as a citizen of Douglas County, or a citizen of Nebraska, as a former legislator, and now a county commissioner, I'm divided in 3 different ways. If I'm sitting in the legislature right now, today, I vote for that bill. I vote for it because it is not all-encompassing tax policy. It's picking small pieces and saying, this is inequitable, this is inequitable. Yeah, okay, it is. Now I'm sitting at a county board level, and I'm going, this funds 1/5 of those mandated services. 1/5. If it goes away, we have a huge problem. You see the issue at hand? So a person like me, in my opinion, I have to step back and say, if I'm going to actually make a decision on this, what is the most effective way to tax individuals if you're a governmental subdivision? What's the most efficient way? What's the fairest way? If I go through 1067 and I divide it up 9 different ways, my fear, my biggest fear right now is that I'd sit there and go, this is bad law. There's about 2 states in the Union, in the United States, that are actually doing what we do here. So it's a conundrum, isn't it? I can only tell you this, I can repeat what I said before. If we do things like this, it could happen, the legislature could do it. If they do,
30 seconds.
We are put in a position at the county level, and I'm serious as a heart attack. We're put in a position where we're going to have to start making some really, really hard decisions. And the first place we're going to go is to 22 non-mandated services. So when we start doing that, I'd like people to come up to the podium and say, oh, no, we can't get rid of this. We can't get rid of this. Oh, but remember,
Time.
4 months ago. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Morgan?
I was going to wait to say a couple things after we hear from the public about this, some of the legislation. The one that really disturbs me the most, I think I'm probably feeling like 1067 is going to pass this year. They have 25, I think it is, co-sponsors of that bill with 49 state senators. So there's a likelihood that that is going to happen, and we better be prepared. And I stated that some time ago to this board, just things we face with the budget coming up. The one that really concerns me is 1241, because what that means is you're reducing whatever the tax increase is by that amount of money. So I'm not sure where the money's going to come from for pay increases and additional people. And we've heard our county attorney, public defender, the surveyor's office need additional people because they're serving more of the community. And that one, to me, is very, very detrimental. I'd like to see something done on property taxes, and I know Senator McDonald wanted to have a max increase of 5% is all they could raise your property taxes. Now, if you bought a home that's assessed at $450 and you bought it for $600, it would go immediately to that $600 likely. But from then on, it could not be increased more than 5% as long as that was justified. I know our county assessor's here, and he may have some things to say to us, which is always helpful. But I do want to hear from the public on this. But I think that our opposition to the inheritance, I don't think it's going to matter. And I, for one, think maybe it's time for that to become part of the state. So that's where I am. But 1241 really concerns me without having some way to have pay increases. Because if somebody here thinks we're going to be able to raise wages 3% in today's climate world, it isn't going to happen. And we're going to have a real tough situation. And as Commissioner Friend said, some very challenging and difficult decisions in the near future for our excellent Finance Director, Lori Persh.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. We'll take comments from the public.
Dan. Thank you. Two. Good morning. Doug Kagan, 416 South 130th Street, speaking for Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom. First, we encourage all of you commissioners to read each of these bills completely before voting to support or oppose them. We do urge you to support LB 1339. This bill would allow every school board to adopt a written policy governing the carrying and use of firearms in schools. Such written policy must include requirements for personal qualifications, training, appropriate firearms and ammunition, and appropriate use of force. A school board also could vote to adopt a policy to provide school building mapping data, and I emphasize to county law enforcement to use in response to emergencies. Our taxpayer organization encourages this board to support instead of opposing 3 of the bills on the opposed list. County officials tell us that the inheritance tax lowers the amount of property tax required, yet the county spends these dollars on extraneous expenditures, such as the millions given to the UNMC Cancer Center several years ago. This bill also mandates state reimbursement for individuals charged with state crimes but housed in county jails, a pledge upon which the state previously has reneged. The bill also allows Douglas County to expand uses for its Visitors Fund. LB 1211 would offer early voters and in-person voters 22 instead of 30 days to vote. This restriction still allows plenty of time to vote and gives fraudsters less time to engage in ballot harvesting. Also, voters sometimes change their minds about candidates right before an election. LB 1241 would prevent local taxing authorities like counties from gaining a windfall from skyrocketing valuations without having to raise the property tax levy.
This bill would offer incentives for local officials to streamline budgets. We ask you to please consider supporting these bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other public comments?
Ken Anderson, Irvington. LB 1211, again, exactly what Doug Kagan's mentioned, that people get locked in if they vote early and cannot change their votes. And there's something wrong with that you can't change your vote once you vote. It shouldn't be illegal to try to do that. The early vote should be provisional so that a person is allowed to change their vote. Yeah, they should be able to vote every day if they want to during the election period, and it's only the very last vote that they cast. They should get counted backwards from, not counted as the election, as the voting window progresses, but it should be the very last vote that they cast should be the authoritative vote, and throw all the others away instead of making it a crime. That way people are allowed to change their votes as they want to. And you all know, you run campaigns, you send out a mailing, send out or perform some kind of campaign activities towards the very end. And nobody can change their mind if they vote 30 days prior, and you run a campaign activity 15 days prior, and nobody can change their mind, or the voters can't change their mind once they've cast their vote. It shouldn't be that way. They should be allowed to change their mind. I see a scowl there. Am I not making sense? But it should not be a crime to vote 2, 3, 4, 5 times. It should be that the very last vote is the authoritative vote, and throw the rest away instead of making it a crime. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. We, the people, did not authorize you to lobby the state legislature. You didn't ask us about these bills. You shouldn't be spending your time lobbying against us. Sometimes you're maybe lobbying for us, but you didn't ask for our input. You might be committing an illegal act, and therefore this meeting could possibly be null and void. Your actions taken today could possibly be null and void, if you understand the Open Meetings Act. Now here's one that I'd like you to oppose, that you ought to discuss, because you can declare it an emergency item and discuss it. LB 1390, introduced, makes me, people like him, people like Doug, if you read it, the intent probably is to change the election law before the next election, and people like me can be declared the enemy. We can be declared a criminal and maybe arrested right here, right now. If you, I think somebody referred to, by the time it gets to the end of the process, it won't look anything like it is now. So they insert a word, that they might even insert my name, that I am one of those people that threatened you today because of my tone of voice. Not because I committed a criminal act. That's not constitutional, ladies and gentlemen. Oppose it. And there's a bunch of others. Now, don't come crying to me because you don't have money. This gentleman's salary right here, you can remove him and his salary. We did not authorize you to pay a lobbyist. We did not pay you, I think it was November 23rd meeting, where you voted to give hundreds of thousands of dollars to a migrant, a national organization of migrant, et cetera, et cetera. I have it in my thing right over there. But I'm going to give you a copy of 1390. I'd like you to debate the language of this today. And I'd like the county attorney to come down here and tell you that maybe you're committing an act that today, all of this could be possibly null and void. We did not authorize any of this. And by the way, a smaller number of people pay the inheritance tax. We didn't authorize that. I don't know if I qualify or disqualify, but you're coming after it, aren't you? By the time that bill gets changed, they'll be coming after everybody in Omaha because you're crying about you don't have money. Excuse me. You people look awful silly and sound silly. The purpose of government is not to spend yourself out of existence. All right? So stop all these programs and these appropriations you're giving to people that are national associations. Tell them to stay out of my business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Luis Jimenez, 2709 Dewey Avenue. Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I thought I was going to have 10 minutes to speak on this, not 5.
You have 4, actually.
8 minutes instead of 4, because you have 2 items to support and oppose. So, Mr. Fresnel, I think the board wants to have a debate today. I support all of your items on A, resolutions to support the following legislative bills. And then I support the LB 1067 to eliminate the inheritance tax, adopt state prisoner reimbursement act, and change the authorized uses of certain county funds. So what I've noticed, and I've been researching this past year, is that you have the tax levying authority on property taxes, and you get the vast majority of the money. You get about 96 to 98% of it during a year-to-year period. Yet, with all the issues that are in front of you, and knowing that the unicameral wanted to eliminate the inheritance tax, you reduced your tax levy by $6 million over a 1-year period. So you got rid of $6 million. If the inheritance tax comes through, over time you're evidently going to lose $13 million. And I know the finance director had a different number, but that's what I read, between 13 to 14 million. So now what you're taxed to do, or charged to do, is to come up with the shortfall. I know that a lot of your departments don't do grant writing. They depend on the on your funds to finance their department. So that's one avenue, or one income revenue stream would be to increase your grant writing activity. Your whole pot is 500 million. Who wouldn't want to put millions to it? That's a great fundraising narrative, that your entity has 500 million every year. Another thing is that, and this could be for a presentation, is the TIF, the tax increment financing situation within the county. You need to bring somebody from that department, especially from the city, to say what are the revenues going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years. These projects are going to soon going to come into your coffers. And I anticipate that, from what I've been hearing, that the TIF program is so great that it's going to cover 10, 15, 20 million over the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Good morning, Commissioners. Jaquela Yarbrough, 2417 Burdette Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68111. I always like to start with whatever I'm doing. I always like to know the mission and understand the values, and because it helps us to get centered and understand what we try to achieve. I'm in a lot of pain today because I got in a car accident last week, or else I would have been here to protest the decision you made to take our public comments at the end. I just want to remind you of our mission here. It's to respect and respond to Douglas County citizens and provide quality services in a cost-effective and efficient manner. And I wonder, as a citizen, how many times our representatives are having these conversations and having these discussions and deciding for us and not with us what's in the best interest. Now, I understand that the rules have changed. I haven't had time to catch up because I've been in and out of the hospital. My primary concern, obviously, as one might suspect, is going to be LB 1339. I am perturbed that, Ms. Havakati, you haven't pulled these forward to be opposed, considering the disparate conditions that we already experience when we're looking at the juvenile justice system in Douglas County. 90% of those kids are Black, so we already know what's going to happen. If we have unmarked officers walking around, kids don't know who they are, the first shooting's going to be at North High or Northwest High School. As soon as our kids start fighting and some officer steps in to intervene, he's going to have a reason to shoot one of our kids. That kid's going to be Black or Mexican. Okay? I don't know at what point we are going to turn around as a commission, as a county board, and say, hey, we got to start doing something about the annihilation of Black kids and kids of color. I don't know at what point, and maybe it's because it just makes this county entirely too much money and the state as a whole. But the fact that LB at 1339 is even something that we would support is unimaginable. The fact that we do not have any money coming into this grand project that we built, that we already estimated this shortfall of funds. Mayor Dodd came in here, talked about that anticipated shortfall of funds. I don't understand how we have such a shortfall of funds that we're arguing over the death tax or the inheritance tax when this is directly going to end up in loss of life, LB 1339. In my district, 68111, 68110, 68134. Those shootings are going to happen at Northwest High School. They're going to kill our kids. This is a license to kill children who are fighting because they're not going to know who the officers of the law are. Why would we ever? There's no reason ever for anyone to be armed in a school. Not a teacher, not a cop. We have not had any mass shootings in Nebraska. There's not a reason for anyone to carry a gun around our babies. And until we start seeing our kids as babies, I know we want to lock them up. I know it makes us a lot of money. I know we like to build these grand buildings and we come up with these plans that don't make any sense. And although they're making us broke and bankrupt as a county, we still want to go forward with it. But I got a problem with LB 1339. Spend the money the rest of the way you want to do it, but don't kill our babies. I would urge the county board to take a hard stance against LB 1339 because it has crazy implications for children of color, which is already demonstrated by the overrepresentation of kids of color in our system. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments?
Walter Peffer. I'm the Douglas County Assessor, Register of Deeds, 1819 Farnham. I'm a proponent of 1241, simply put, as a pillar of the governor's tax plan, where he wants to control valuations and spending. By opposing it, you're sending a message. I understand an unconditional or a conditional opposal. You might as well have just said we're neutral. The bill is being held tomorrow. And all the bill does is simply say if valuations go up, and every one of you at one time or another have mentioned to me that's a problem, your mill levy goes down accordingly. It stops all the governmental entities and everyone from taking the windfall profit and then using that money and saying that they didn't raise taxes. So this is one of the bills that are coming out. There are probably 3 more that are in the queue that you're not going to like. So I'm not going to waste a lot of your time. I have too much respect for each and every one of you. I would simply say I'd rather see you say, neutral instead of opposing the governor's plan. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Mr. Peffer, there's two questions for you if you're willing to take them. We'll start over here and then go over there. Commissioner Morgan? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I agree with you, Walt, about wanting to support that. The only thing I was concerned about is it's saying there isn't anything, and we're dependent upon property taxes, you know, and if it said only to 5% of the cost of living, then that would seem to me to be fair, because I'm not sure how we can continue government at the same level if each year we're staying at the same budget as 5 years ago for the county because of pay increases that we must give, as does the private sector. And they don't have some provision that you could raise at the cost of living. You can answer that.
My understanding of that provision is in the bill.
It is, okay.
Where it would go down, you can adjust it for the cost of living index. Yeah, and another way to look at this, Commissioner, is right now you have a budget. Is that correct? You have a budget.
Correct.
I'm presuming that's correct. And then let's say valuations go up next year. What happens? You're at a budget now. If it goes up, your valuation goes down, but then you can adjust for the cost of living index. What you're not doing is taking the increase. That's all.
Okay. I did not know that, and I'm not sure. I think Marcos wants to say something. Go ahead, Marcos.
Commissioner Marcos San Martin, Douglas County Administration. I will just say, the intent of the bill, and I'm reading directly from the intent page. LB 1241 introduces a levy limit based on the percentage increase in a political subdivision's total taxable property valuation. An increase in property valuations must be offset by a reduction in the levy. So that's how we interpret the bill to be, any valuation increase, the levy must be lowered. I will look at the details, see if there's a.
Yeah. Marcos, I believe it was amended.
And while he's looking, I did say that Senator McDonald was trying to do a max of 5%, which I thought was perfect, or cost of living, but not to exceed 5%, which I was totally in favor of.
Right.
And thankful that he was going to try to do that.
Yes.
I know.
Senator McDonald's done a nice job.
Go ahead, Marcos.
Sean,
you got it now.
Sean's on.
So our lobbyist is, I believe, on the.
Patrick, can you identify yourself?
Patrick Bloomingdale, County Administrator. Our lobbyist is saying that what Walt has said is not correct. So we'll try to get him on the phone so he can elaborate.
That'd be fine.
And we're still under PJ's second round here, which has about 30 seconds left.
I do see that there is an amendment that was filed, but this hasn't gone to committee yet. Hey, Sean,
Yeah, LB.
I'm going to put you on speaker.
Yeah, LB 1241 is introduced as a budget limitation on political subdivisions, meaning you cannot go further or receive more tax asking than you did the prior year, because your levy is going to have to be reduced by the valuation increase. I mean, it's in Chapter 77-344, which is budget limitations.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, that's time, PJ.
So I'd make this comment. It might be good if you maybe, when the committee has a hearing on this, talk about that, and I'm going to call a couple of state senators about it too.
Oh, I intend to. Thank you.
McDonald.
I know that Kavanaugh and Rogers had a comment or question, and it might be still directed to
I don't
you.
see any growth in the.
Potentially. Kavanaugh?
And thanks for your comments. Did I hear you correctly? You support LB 1241?
Correct.
And I think you said it was part of the governor's tax package?
It's a pillar of the governor's tax package, yes.
Yeah, and I've checked that, and I'm not finding it in the governor's tax package. I've checked with people in Lincoln, and they say it's not part of the governor's tax package. So,
Well,
I mean, for what it's worth, we'll find out whether it is or not, but it would have a substantial, along with LB 1067, negative impact on Douglas County's budget. So I appreciate your input on this. I can't see from the point of view of the fiscal well-being of Douglas County how that will be a good thing. It's just, you know, as was indicated by Sean Kelly a moment ago, a budget limitation on our ability as county commissioners to pay for what we have to pay for, everything from, you know, public safeties to streets and infrastructure. So I guess I'd have a tough time going where you're going. I appreciate your position, and I know that you've been thoughtful in coming to it, but I don't think it's part of the governor's tax package, and I think it would have a real bad, along with 1067, impact on our ability to pay our bills. So thanks for your impact, and I look forward to seeing you soon. I've been trying to get up there to see you since the first of the year, and I'll be up soon. Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Walt.
You bet.
Then we're going to jump to Commissioner Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to respect the assessor's opinion on it, but there's the practical application of how this is going to play out. And I think people need to know this probably actually in practicality is worse than it sounds, because every year, this is before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, the number that was, we operate on a structural budget. So I think every year you come in, you're coming in, I think the number was 4% down. This is pre-pandemic because of raises, heat, lights, all the other costs you come in. Yeah, so you every year you're coming in 4% down. So the result of this bill is not only, wouldn't only be an increase to get you to what you want, you gotta make up what you lost. And so my fear is post-pandemic, we haven't had that new number, but I am sure post-pandemic, if it was 4 before post-pandemic, it's gonna be like 7 or 8, probably 6 to 8 pre-pandemic. So that's really how the county's budget functions in that regard. So if we come back and you say you get your evaluation number, you go back down to 0, you actually start at -4, probably -4 plus. So that's what I'm saying in practicality of how this operates. It's going to be hard and it's going to be rough. And, you know, in years past, I mean, the experiences look like it's going to be different. I think probably 4 people have been through a real hard budget where money wasn't flowing like water. And usually when that came in, if it came in under 4%, you were cut. And so that's the degree that it will be to that degree. So, you know, I remember long when I worked in another political office, and I think I may have said this before, but, you know, a boss I worked for once said, good government costs. And there was a poll done, and I remember the guy saying literally, people will have to have holes in the streets before they voted for a tax increase. And I'd be damned. They did it in 2022 when it was holes in the streets. So that's the same situation I think applies now. And I don't want to get us to the point where we have the similarity of holes in the street at the county level, and you have to make that up to get there. So so I want to put on the record about how the application of that law might work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Jump to your friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Walt, thanks for the input, and your knowledge here is very valuable. I was going to say, and you've probably tired of me talking about this type of stuff, but these bills, it's all about the unintended consequences. The language that's changing in 1241 it actually starts on line 20 on page 8, and it says, in addition to the specific levy limits provided in this section, if the total taxable valuation of property in a political subdivision exceeds the total taxable valuation from the prior year, then such political subdivision shall be subject to an additional levy limit calculated as follows. And then it goes down. We get 13% of the property tax revenue, so the percentage would go down by that amount. What's not factored into a bill like this, and I'm probably, maybe everybody in this room and anybody watching knows this. What's not factored into a bill like this is what the state and the federal government actually make us do. We don't have any choice. I've said this before, and you guys think I'm kidding. I'm not. There are certain things that we have to try to accomplish. Sheriff's Department, county attorney, public defender, all law enforcement related issues. There are certain roads things we have to take care of, right? No choice. Corrections as part of the law enforcement piece. My point is this, and I've said this in public forums, I've said this all over the place. The levy lid that we look at in Douglas County, we get 13% of the property tax revenue. The levy lid in Douglas County that we're in charge of, there are all kinds of things. The schools, the city, Douglas County, Metro Community College, MUD, OPPD, all of the things under there that fall under that mix. You're going to reduce all the percentage of all of their levy lids when the number comes in high, when the valuations come in high. My point is, and I'm not an economist, I'm an amateur economist, and I'm not an accountant, definitely not an accountant. These are apples and oranges. When you compare the levy lid to valuations, it's apples and oranges. When you bring them together, you've got an imperfect tax code. So when you have an imperfect tax code, the best way, and Commissioner Morgan alluded to this, when you have an imperfect tax code and you're trying to predict and you're trying to make predictability out of it, what you do is you say you bought a house at $600,000, you're going to be taxed at 92% of that. You have a house that's worth $400,000, it cannot go up. We have no proof. It cannot go up in any given year by more than 5%. That provides predictability to somebody who's actually sitting in that house, and next year they're trying to figure out what they're going to pay. My final point is this. If I go out and buy a $40,000 car right now, vehicle, brand new vehicle, $40,000, I don't know if I can get one for 40 grand. I know exactly the tax I'm going to pay. So I budget for that right out of the gate. The next year, let's say the car is worth $80,000. It won't happen because valuations on cars that doesn't happen. But what if it did? And I had to pay, I bought that car at 40 grand. That's what I paid for. That's the tax I knew that I was going to be running into. The next year, the car's worth 80, and now you're telling me my sales tax is going to be X? It's not fair. It's inequitable. To come up with equity, I don't know that this bill does it. If you had Commissioner Morgan's thought process, this isn't a bad start, but this just taps the surface, folks. And I'll leave you with the 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Friend. We'll jump to Commissioner Borgeson.
Thank you, but I don't have any questions or comments for you.
Can I make one?
After.
We're under her time.
That's fine.
Okay. That I have asked for LB 1339 to be pulled and taken separately, and I don't think you were here when I asked for that, but appreciate your comments on that. There is also one that I think we need to look at and support it doesn't have to be this week, but next week, I think, is Senator John Kavanaugh introduced LR 287CA, which is a constitutional amendment to require the legislature to compensate political subdivisions for any local imposed revenue source that is reduced or eliminated by the legislature. So at some point, I'm going to be asking the chair to place that on for support. The LB 1211, I just see this as limiting people's ability to vote, and when anything happens in that regards, I'm going to be against that. And then the inheritance tax while I appreciate Doug coming forward, I think it was disingenuous to leave out all of the 9 pretty solid for years and years and years entities that we fund through the inheritance tax, which are vital services to the citizens of Douglas County. Health Center at 3.3, 4 million, 4.5 million. Community Mental Health Center, 3 million, 3 million, 3.250 million. General Assistance, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. Health Department, Health Department 4 million, then 2.850. Our Veteran Services, 500,000, 500,000, 500,000. So again, you know, there are vital services that we provide to our citizens that this inheritance tax is used for. And I'll say it again, I'm not in love with the inheritance tax, but if they're gonna take it away, they need to give us revenue replacement if they expect, which they do because they not only provide unfunded mandates to us at the state level, they shift. They shift responsibilities to the county, and the only thing we have to pay for our services are property taxes, and this pot of inheritance tax does help. And again, I will tell you that if that goes away, to make up for that loss, it's going to have an increase of 2.6 cents, and I'm not saying that's a given, I'm saying that that's a potential. I think we as a county board do a pretty darn good job every year during budget time, and Doug's here every year talking about our budget and looking at ways to reduce and do things more efficiently. So we, I believe, as Douglas County, have the most open budgeting process there is in the state of Nebraska.
30 seconds.
And so those are the reasons why, again, I asked for 1339 to be pulled. I asked that we continue to oppose those bills that we have provided the commentary on today. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Any from public that have not spoken yet? He already spoke.
All right. Good morning, Jennifer Burkhofer with Douglas County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Hansen has asked that we relay a message from him that he couldn't get through via the system here. So Commissioner Friend had talked about unintended consequences here just a little bit ago. And under that premise as well, the sheriff is respectfully asking the board to table any juvenile justice bills until the board staff, county attorney, and the DCSO have had a chance to discuss those items. Hopefully we can find common ground, better outcomes for juvenile offenders and the safety of the public, and avoid unintended consequences. And that is what he is asking. And I'm not really able to answer any questions for you because that's the message from him.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else from the public that has not spoken on legislative?
Greetings. I'm Dennis Schleiss. It's spelled DENNIS SCHLEIS at 4512 Hickory Street, Omaha. I too urge county commissioners to support LB 1241. My wife and I both work hard all our working lives to afford a house and upkeep it. But sometimes it feels like we really don't own the house. We only rent the house because of our property taxes are so high. This bill would put a needed damper on our skyrocketing property taxes. I am hearing a statewide outcry about high property taxes, and several state senators are trying to fix this problem. I ask that Douglas County Commissioners would join in this effort and support LB 1241. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I will take a quick round, and I know that there's a mention of an amendment that was it 1241, Marcos? Could you speak to that amendment so we have the latest information?
Sure, Commissioners, and again, Marcos San Martin County Administration. There, and for the public to know, so there is an amendment that has been filed for LB 1241, 1241, and again, that hearing is tomorrow, the 31st. The amendment that's been provided is a cut and replace amendment, so that That means this, if the amendment's approved, that becomes the new bill. But the language, and I believe it's the same location that Commissioner Friend was referring to. The new language that would be inserted reads, it's very short, so Commissioner, if you just want me to read it, okay. So at that location in 12, it says, in addition to the specific levy limits provided in this section, comma, if the total taxable valuation of a property in a political subdivision exceeds the total taxable valuation from the prior year, then such political subdivisions levy shall be no more than the levy necessary to raise the exact same amount of property taxes as was raised by such political subdivision in the prior year. So this is essentially a limit in the amount itself then. So my analysis remains as a bill to oppose.
Thank you, Marcos. With that, I will ask the board overall, aside from pulling 1339, if the remaining bracket on the supporting and opposed side is one that we can move forward with, or if there's any of these that give you strong heartburn or want additional conversation on, that we could also consider pulling. Does the remaining bracket look okay?
I would make a motion to support those except for LB 1339 that we'll take up separately and oppose those that we have just discussed.
Second, motion by Borgeson, second by Kavanaugh. So, all right.
One moment. So we're doing
The entire bracket except for 1339, that is being pulled off.
Okay.
On both the support and opposed side.
Right.
Did you have oh.
Give me one moment, Commissioners.
Does that mean if policemen can't go into the school if they're working?
Okay.
They can.
Okay, so just to reiterate, this will basically approve A and B less LB 1339.
Correct.
Removes that.
Oh, B is included now?
Yes.
And we would be opposing 1241?
Yes.
The only thing, I guess I favor 1241, except I'd like to see us make sure that they have an amendment that we could have a cost of living increase maximum. I mean, I just don't, so I wouldn't be voting in favor of opposing it, because I think it's the right thing to do with the clause, and I think, Doug, you'd probably support that cost of living in it, too.
It's going to be amended anyway.
All right. We're going to move towards the vote.
Yeah, so we'll move toward, go ahead.
We're moving towards the vote at this point.
Can I speak?
Okay,
For-
I'm sorry.
Doug Kagan, 416 South 130th Street. I just want to.
You spoke on this item already, Mr. Kagan.
Okay. Can I go ahead, or?
You already spoke on this item.
Yes, if you can.
Well,
Okay.
Okay, so we're, once again, I'll start the vote here in a second, but we'd be approving A and B with the removal of LB 1339. And please vote. Thank you. Motion passes. Commissioner Friend and Morgan abstaining. Commissioner Boyle voting no. All other commissioners voting yes.
And I think we're supposed to state why we abstain. My
You may.
reason for abstaining is what I said previously about 1241, that, you know, I want to see it happen, but I'd like to see it have a cost of living in it. So I just share that with my board members.
Thank you. Abstention statement, if you'd like.
I abstained. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I abstained because of some of the comments that I made earlier. I could look, I haven't read each and every one of these bills from front to back, but I read the sections that are actually changing existing statutory law. And like I said, if we wanted to debate, and I'm trying to save time, if we wanted to debate every one of these, I probably would have been yes on 4 or 5 of them. We're not doing that, and I'm not going to subject us to that. That's for those reasons. That's why, Mr. Chair, that's why I abstained.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 6, committee discussion. Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah, we still have 1339 sitting out there.
oh, yes. Yes, you may.
Okay, I make the motion that we oppose LB 1339.
Second.
There's a motion by Borgeson, second by Boyle. Discussion on that. Commissioner Rogers?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm noting I'm abstaining. I need to abstain on this because in addition to the piece that there's objection to, there's about 3 more parts of this bill. And one of the bills I'm actively involved in and involved in, so I need to abstain because of that involvement with my job. So.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Borgeson, did you have additional comment?
Just the comment that I would make is that the bill was amended at some point during this, during their committee hearing or whatever. The part on the mapping, I'm all for. That's great, but the rest of it, I'm not. And so as long as it's tied to one, I think we oppose.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, is your light on?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just looking for clarification on 1339, and Marcos, maybe you could give us that. As it was presented, it's a NACO bill with conditional support, and I guess a couple of things. I don't know if there's a statement of intent available yet on this bill. That's a formal legislative document that tells you in brief what the bill does. But if there is, that would be good to have in the record here. And then lacking that, what is your and Mr. Kelly's brief version of what this bill does in its current form as amended, or the proposed amendments? And then what are the conditions of the conditional support that NACO has? I presume they've articulated what conditions they are supporting this and what reservations they may have. Could you help us with that, Marcos?
Yes, Commissioners. Marcos C. Martin, Douglas County Administration. I will do my best to answer those questions. I will say that the NACO conditional support, as I learned from NACO, it is conditional support. Their comments were from the NACO boards. This would be the position of the NACO board. Conditional support for LB 1339. Language needs to be tweaked on the mapping piece. Okay, so that's their conditional support. And then they have no position on the schools allowing armed security. So those were NACO's comments to me. Hopefully that's helpful for that, to answer that.
Okay.
The hearing. Oh.
Just a real quick question on that. What are we mapping here?
Yes, this particular bill authorizes school boards to adopt a policy to provide mapping data for public safety agencies to use in emergencies. And those maps have to be compatible with and able to be integrated into existing software platforms for those public safety agencies.
I think Commissioner Rogers might have some clarification on this.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, the heart of this is to put these mapping systems on point, so if there is a mass casualty event, law enforcement will have access to the map, so when they show up, they know how to work their way through the building. So if somebody says they're here, it'll put those maps on record so they can have access to the maps and be able to go through the facility.
And Marcos, what else can you tell us about the bill as amended? Because it seems like it has a bunch of moving parts.
It may very well, Commissioner, what I'll say is I don't see any amendments pending to the bill itself, to 1339. It is, as it's entered in at the legislative site. The only data I have on it, that it's been introduced or it's being held by the Education Committee, and that there are no amendments pending. The info that I do have, though, is that yes, the bill removes certain limitations on who can carry a firearm at a school or on school grounds. It allows qualified law enforcement officers to carry firearms when off duty, and persons who are acting as security for the school and in accordance with the school policies, et cetera. The school definition also includes post-secondary institutions. It reads as school boards must adopt a written policy, including training, et cetera. Allows schools to apply for grants to provide maps to be shared with the public safety agencies, and then what I had read earlier about the mapping for use in emergencies. So that's the background I have on the bill.
Thank you. Well, perhaps, because this is a much bigger issue now that we get into it a little bit, we could lay this one over, because I'd like to hear from like OPS and District 66, what are their views on this? I haven't got a firm grasp on what all of the implications would be, but we've got consensus on the overall package, and there is no committee hearing set on this bill, correct?
That is correct, Commissioner.
So we
There's
have
no
time.
committee hearing.
And if we laid it over even 1 week, maybe that would give us an opportunity. I certainly would reach out to school board people on my own behalf to get some clarification. I suggest that, a layover.
I'll support
Sure.
that.
And
Do you want to make a motion?
I would move for 1 week layover.
I'll second.
Well, we're having discussion on the current motion. Commissioner Borgerson?
I have to make a correction, I'm sorry.
Quick, Marcus.
I have to make a correction. Yeah, 1339, as I understand from Sean, it will come through today as being scheduled for 2/6. So February 6th, it will be scheduled. And I did just count up it looks like the only other information I have on the bill is that there are 29 co-sponsors that have attached their name to the bill.
Thank you,
So
Marcus.
I wanted to share that. But yes, 2/6 will be the hearing date.
Commissioner Borgerson?
Well, I was trying to find a way to state this. Because there's two pieces to the legislation that I don't know if we can conditionally support the mapping piece and not the other piece. That's what I'm trying to figure out, because again, I'm fine with the mapping. And I did have a question. They talk about a fund in here, a state fund
Can we start the clock, please?
huh?
Clock wasn't starting.
Oh,
Sorry.
they do talk about a state fund in here that schools can apply for, again, to pay for their cost of this mapping, because I did have a concern about that, especially when I think an entire legislative session was talked about the schools and all their spending, but yet we're providing another thing that they have to do. But it does say in here that there is a creation, or there is, I don't know if it's a creation, there is a school safety and security fund, but it doesn't say if it's funded. So, again, I'm for the mapping, so if there's a way that we could say we support part of the bill and not the other, I'm fine with that too, but those are my comments.
Thank you. I'll take a quick round as well. Another option is simply to monitor the bill. It's, we're not the school board. We know that. And they're, I don't know where they stand on this. I'm assuming they're going to take a position on this. Us not taking a position doesn't prevent the school board or law enforcement entities or other entities from testifying and taking positions on this. So that is another option as well.
Just watch.
I think that's reasonable.
So I will withdraw my motion to oppose and change it to watch. But I do know that the schools have taken a position to oppose this. But I'm fine with watching it to see what happens. But and maybe this comes back after the hearing that is going to happen on the 6th, and then we'll decide if we want to change our position at that time.
So I would move to amend my layover to a monitor watch position.
I withdrew my original.
Okay.
And then made a motion to watch.
Okay, then I support that.
Is the seconder okay with withdrawing it as well? Okay.
So the motion is
to
The-
watch.
Well, we can either officially do a motion to watch or just by default watch it and see how it evolves.
Yep. We're only talking about 1339.
I would like to take a vote to officially watch.
Okay. Motion by Borgson to monitor the bill. Is there a second?
That
Commissioner Boyle.
Kavanaugh did.
Commissioner Kavanaugh? Okay. Very
Well,
good.
it was I was going to mark Commissioner Boyle, so that we were amending the original motion to change it from opposed to watch. So I have a motion by Commissioner Borgeson, second by Commissioner Boyle to
monitor the bill.
monitor LB 1339, and Commissioner Kavanaugh withdrew his motion to lay over
Right.
subsequently. So.
Okay.
All right. Move to a vote.
Motion passes. Commissioner Rogers and Friend abstaining. All other commissioners voting yes.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to explain that?
You may, yeah.
Karen, I'll be brief. We could have done, what we just did, we could have done with every bill on this list. And in my view, and I'm only one guy, and you guys don't have to listen to me, we should have done that with every one of them. But we didn't. So I'm just respectfully abstaining because there's some, based on my reading, there's some decent parts of this bill, some unintended consequences possibly. So I don't have any problem watching this bill. So anyway, the reason for my abstention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
There's a second abstention if there's a statement that wants to be made. If not, we'll move on. All right, very good. Now we'll go back to committees. Section 6, item A, Finance Budget Report as presented. And we do have one presentation under item C, Child and Youth Services Committee. The board, just to open up the context here, the board recently got a presentation / PowerPoint on data trends that cover a multitude of years. So it's a very high-level overview of some data trends that we'd like to share today. This could inspire questions that we may want to delve deeper into at future committee meetings, future board meetings. So that is very much welcome if we need to take back those questions and talk to different stakeholders about why may this trend be happening, why may that trend be happening. Obviously, there's a lot in the JJ sphere to look at and dissect. And so we're going to start with this high-level overview today that the board recently received and that we will share with the public. So, Kim?
Sure. Kim Havakati, Deputy County Administrator over our juvenile justice reform efforts. In January of every year, it has been our custom to come and give what the historical population trends have been at the Douglas County Youth Center. We have completed that through now of December 2023. So this is the report. I think we always have to keep in mind a couple of things. First thing is, as under Nebraska statute, a county does not control the front door or the back door of any detention facility. That is all controlled by entities outside of a county. Also, under Nebraska statutes, current statutes, and a couple of the bills you discussed today, a detention facility is not a treatment and rehabilitation facility. It's a short-term facility to get the youth stabilized, to get them to treatment and rehab. But as we look at the data, it's very important that we look at, first, the number of youth currently in Douglas County. when we looked at the U.S. Census for ages 10 to 19, which is our juvenile age, there's 84,330 youth in our county. When you break that down in 2023, how many of those had law enforcement contact of any type where a ticket was given? A ticket, not necessarily booked into detention, a ticket. There were 2,875 youth. When you break that down further as to how many of those actual youth that had law enforcement contact were admitted into the Douglas County Youth Center, there were 607. And then when you break that down into the average daily population of the Douglas County Youth Center, there were 75 in 2023. And I always believe this funnel is important so that people get a picture of the number of youth we actually have in our community. The second thing that we always include in this report is, and we can only go back to 2017 at this point, but we have to be looking at the number of law enforcement arrests in our community because, of course, that impacts our numbers in detention. So starting in 2017, these were the number of arrest incidents. You will notice in 2023, it is up. But you're gonna hear me say this a number of times as we go quickly through these slides. I really do believe when you look at 2023, you have to compare it to 2019. And the reason being, we all know as a community and as a nation, 2020 and 2021 was a COVID pandemic. That impacted everything that happened, whether court systems, youth not going to school, you name it, we could go on for an hour on that. So when you look at 2023, you'll notice we had a little bit over 3,200 arrests. And that is a little bit higher than 2019, but pretty much on target. So now let's look at the admissions at the Douglas County Youth Center. This slide actually breaks it down between adult court and juvenile court. This goes back to 2007. So you can see the trend line starting in 2007 and how that trend line went down until 2021, especially in the juvenile court area, and then it has increased back to. Now, you will also notice when it comes to the adult court, in 2015, it pretty much went to 87, and we've pretty much stayed, about 10% fluctuation, not a huge increase in our adult court population. One thing I want to point out when you look at this data from 2007 to 2014, that adult court population, we were housing as a community many of our county court youth that had traffic violations and some other type violations. So the law changed, so those youth could not be detained any longer. But again, when you look at 2023, the total amount, and you compare it to 2019, we are still below 2019 levels in all the categories. So this is a slide on admissions by gender since 2007. As you can see, the percentage of female and male has pretty much stayed the same throughout this entire time period. You'll also again notice when you compare 2023 to 2019, we've had less male admissions and less female admissions during that time period compared to 2019. Again, I'm not talking about 2020, 2021. So the next slide looks at race and ethnicity from 2007 through 2023. Now on this slide, we do not use numbers, but instead we use percentages of the youth that were detained during that year and what race they were. And so when you look at it, there's one data I do want to point out because we feel it is significant, and that is when you look at the Asian population. When you look at the Asian population in 2019, it was about 2.6%. That's now up to 6.2%. When you look at that statistically, that is a large increase within our Asian population within DCYC. But also when you look as to the Black population, we know we have disproportionate minority contact in youth at DCYC. You'll notice the number of Black youth has remained fairly consistent since 2007. The same with white youth. In fact, white youth since 2007, look at how it has gone down from 34%, so 1 out of 3 were white in 2007. In 2023, it's down to 20%. So you'll see the decrease in the number of white youth being detained and an increase in youth of color. So then the other thing that we take a look at from 2011 to 2023 is what is our average daily population, because that's what most of us go off of. We have this broken down between the adult court average daily population and the juvenile court average daily population. Again, when you look at 2023 compared to 2019, it's almost a mirror image. We know that everything went down, youth in detention went down in 2020, 2021. We've come back up in 2022. In 2023, we are back to where we were in 2019. The next ones are slides that you very commonly see. You see them in your weekly reports that we send you. These slides, though, look at since 2011. For each one of those years, what was our highest population during that time period and what was our lowest population. And then we talk about the fluctuation range and the average daily population. Again, when you look at 2019 compared to 2023, it started in 2022, and then 2023, we're back to where we were in 2019. So that's the total population, and then the next slides break it down into our adult court population and what is the fluctuation that we have seen from 2011 to 2023. What are the highs and the lows for each one of those years, and then what's the average daily population for the adult. You'll notice for about the last 5 years, we've been averaging right around 30 youth within our adult system. Next one is the same type of graph, but it's for a juvenile court daily population, the highs and the lows for each one of those years. Again, if you compare the 2023 to 2019, it looks almost identical. Last slide. And we added this slide this year because we have to, as you guys know, we have talked a lot about what is the average length of stay. How long are you staying? So we looked at the average time to release in days. We could do it from 2007 through 2023. I'm going to point out, first look at the adult population. Started at 38 days in 2007, now we're up to 182 days is the average length of stay, the time to release. Now the key here becomes again to look at 2019. In 2019, it was 102 days in adult court. We know in 2020, it went up to 181 days, but we also know as a system, many of our courts were not operating during that time period because of COVID. So youth were sitting. I think the part that is concerning is that in 2023, we're back at the same levels. That time to release has not decreased, okay? And when you look at the juvenile court time to release, you can see that also has been gradually increasing through the years too. So I'm open to any questions. Like I said, this is just our historical data. It is not a point in time or what youth are there. It's just looking at historically what has been happening.
Thank you, Kim. We'll jump to Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thanks for this. Just a brief overcap, and this is very troubling. The average daily population is up to an average of 79 as reflected in the graph on page 4. The average length of stay is up as represented on the graph on page 6, although it's not called average length of stay on this item. I don't know why.
The main reason being, Commissioner,
I'm sorry, when I'm done. There's no average of the entire population, they're given distinctly, but both populations' average length of stay is up. Arrests are up. Admissions are up, as reflected on page 2. And the demographics, the only thing that seems to be down are the number of white children relative to the entire population, which I guess would mean minority incarcerations are up. So, you know, these are all bad trends, particularly in light of the kids' jail fiasco, which shows a facility that's empty, over budget and over time, woefully inadequate for the populations that we're talking about. I mean, an average daily population of 79 and a kids' jail maximum capacity, which cannot be utilized, of 54. You do the math. It would be good going forward if we called average length of stay, rather than average time to release. It would be good going forward if we had a collective average length of stay for children in our youth center, rather than break out two populations. Both populations show that they are high. The adult court population at 182 days and the juvenile court population of 41 days. It would be instructive for us to be able not to have to do the math ourselves on this page, but get an average length of stay, as we've had for years with our Douglas County Youth Center reports, which we no longer receive. But, you know, the information that you have here is really, as I said, troubling in light of the fact that we've got a new facility vacant, inadequate before it even opens, and all of the trend lines going the other way to what we were assured by the proponents of the kids' jail would be the trend in the incarcerated youth population. So either people didn't know or they misspoke when they told us that these populations would be in line with the capacity of the kids' jail, because they're not. And that has been a huge waste of money, taxpayers' money. It's been a tax increase for everybody's property taxes, and it's resulted in what we just indicated. Average daily population at 79, not 54 or really 44, 79. And average length of stay, 41 days, 185 days, whatever the average of that is. Arrests up, admissions up, minority incarceration up. And, you know, these were all exactly the opposite of what we were assured would happen when we embarked on this fiasco a number of years ago. It wasn't like people didn't know. People were told over and over and over again by law enforcement, if nobody else, that if your population is going up, your numbers are probably going to follow the increase in population. We were assured, no, no, no.
Time.
New programs would come online and the population would go down. That has not occurred. And so an enormous waste of money has resulted.
Time.
And the children are no longer adequately supported.
Thank you, Commissioner Kavanaugh. I'll do a quick round just to do an inquiry on the average time to release slide. And this is just going to have an open conversation in regards to looking at that number of the time to release for kids who are sitting there on adult charges. We're looking at 182 days, which is a substantial amount of time. To that end, if either yourself or any, you know, research or best practices that you could think of, what would be the ideal scenario? What would be happening with these youth to not have them sitting there for 182 days? What should be happening faster? What should be expedited? How should the system work differently? What would be the hypothetical ideal scenario for the adult charged youth who are listed here as stating 182 days?
When we looked at the data, we know for adult charged youth that those are going to take a longer time period just because of the type of cases they are. We know they're the most severe felony cases. Right now, I believe, Commissioner, we have 6 kids at DCYC charged with first-degree murder. Those are going to take a long time. The one area where we have really tried to work on are those motions to transfer. For almost every youth that is filed on in adult court, defense attorneys are filing motions to transfer. Many of those motions to transfer, when we looked at the data, were taken 9 months, 12 months before the actual case in district court even started to determine if the youth was guilty or not. So if we could lower or decrease the time on those motions to transfer, then we can move the cases faster and get to the actual case that's going on in district court. So that was our main way of doing it and trying to work with the district court judges.
I'm almost wondering, again, you could disaggregate these scenarios quite a bit. For these youth that are sitting there for such a long amount of time, facing potential adult charges, we discussed how we would like, a judge to determine quicker, are you going to send this down to juvenile, or are you going to keep this in adult? But even if they are sitting there facing adult charges, I'm just wondering, like, kind of dissecting it a little bit further, like, how many of those youth, at the end of the day, they go through a proceeding, maybe it was in adult court, and maybe they're not found to be guilty, but they sat there this entire time for 182 days or something of that kind of substantial nature, or is the percentage very high that, it was a scenario where, a murder was committed, and it is a high percentage that the prosecution kind of moves forward, and, they move on to adult incarceration. I'm just wondering if there's any statistical significance of a child sitting there for so long, facing adult court, actually goes through adult proceedings, but maybe is found not guilty and had to sit there that entire time.
I'm sure we can pull that for you, Commissioner. Most of the cases that we've seen do end up, the youth ends up being convicted, and they end up going to what we call NCYF, the Nebraska Youth Correctional Facility, which is the adult correctional facility. The other thing to bear in mind when you are dealing with youth that are charged in the adult system, if they do not have a juvenile court case at 18 years of age, we do move them over to the county's adult facility also. So these youth could be sitting a lot longer in adult corrections, but we move them over at 18.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Commissioner Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just elaborate on some previous points, and one, I want to talk to the importance of the breakdown between the juvenile and adult populations. So I think the comments that you just asked in regards to the adult population, they are fair comments, but I think those are matters that I don't think we can even get addressed and talk to until you talk to the juvenile number. And I say the importance of the breakout because, as we all know, even with the adults and the juveniles, our system is rehabilitative, which means even if you're there for the adult charges in that process, you're holding to go to East Omaha for those more severe charges if they're waiting there in that system. But specifically, the breakout for the juvenile piece is important because it goes to the action that we just took to oppose the bill number the bill number that was expressed in there about making DCYC a rehabilitative facility. This is at the heart of why we're breaking down the juvenile numbers, because maybe a few numbers in there may be kids on juvenile charges, but if you took that number out, if you took that number and that number processed like it would, space would be adequate. And note the point made about projections and things like that. I think the points were made that there were pre-COVID and post-COVID, and I think the trend is consistent all over the country in regards to pre and post-COVID. So if we start back here where we are with the juvenile numbers or where they're at and the length that they're staying there, that is the connection. Now, there's points have been made all the time on the floor in the past about accountability. And the point is, everybody will have their day in the light, and you have to put the light on where accountability is in this. The process with the juvenile piece and the importance, again, of breaking this down is that those are maybe kids that may be in predisposition, and those are kids that we've constantly talked about on what that next stage is, and there's some action trying to make sure we can get there and make the court feel comfortable. But the large piece there is, the kids on probation. Since we renegotiated the contract for the 6-month period to get there, we've started back taking kids out of state. My understanding is there's 6 kids out of state, and that clog, because of capacity around the state, is reflecting itself here. I'm sure we've got 6 here in our facility that are not in Douglas County, and I'm sure throughout the infrastructure throughout Douglas County, there are kids from other counties. That's at the heart of this length of stay number, the capacity number that the state has to step up and come with. And until that happens, and until we push on all parts for people to be accountable for their parts in the system, we're going to be there. So I say that to, again, emphasize the fact that the breakdown is there, because the juvenile number is the one you can get at before you can really start pushing hard on the adult piece. And right now, that is lacking from investment at the state. And based on everything we just talked about now, in essence, because of lack of investment from the state, it is a cost shift, because they are sitting there and we are paying for them. And in the long run, they're not able to get to the services that they need to get to. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. At the moment, I don't see further lights. Is there public commentary on the presentation?
Thanks, Kim.
Jaquela Yarborough, 2417 Burdette Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68111. I echo the sentiments of Commissioner Kavanaugh, sometimes to my detriment, because it affects me in other places where I'm trying to form relationships and it just seems inevitable at times. We're told that partnership, collaboration, collectivism is the goal of the county and our state partners and juvenile probation and whatnot. I stand here, having been a person who turned down medical school, to start a community center with my own money to do this work. And I really don't care what happens, who makes decisions at a higher level. I'm going to continue to not only serve my county, but Nebraska, because our kids and our families deserve it. We absolutely do not deserve some narrative of individuals putting numbers together. I mean, clearly, we all can read the same numbers. We all see that we have a disproportionate minority contact issue in Douglas County that we are not addressing head on. Now, we have made some strides, or at least some attempts in the past. We've had great stakeholders. I'm even looking on Zoom. A lot of those people are here. We've had people from the community who just stopped showing up because we're not making any progress in the appropriate direction. And no matter what we add or what we show, how much we show, we're vested in this work. We continue to be pummeled. For example, the county has a race, equity, diversity, and inclusion team that regularly meets. It's headed by a JDI coordinator who we voted to keep her paid position, despite racial implications that I have submitted to Ms. Kim Havakati. Marianne, I'm not sure if you were on that email, but I know I've submitted to my commissioner, Commissioner Rogers. Nothing has been done about, we have these issues at the top, these people that we have in key pivotal positions who perpetuate the disproportionate minority contact that we have in this county. It is a clear problem that obviously there's not a black woman sitting here on the county board, so it probably doesn't get echoed as loud as it needs to. Why? Because I'm from that target area. I experienced that as a person who sits in the top, who goes into rooms with people who don't look like me, as the only expert in that room. I sit with architects, I sit with engineers, I sit with people who have PhDs in locking people up and theories about what works for children who come out of my community. And I try with all of my heart to say, what you're saying is not accurate. It does not fit this demographic. And we continue to make decisions that are not in the best interest of all these kids we keep locking up. These trends are going to stay the same because they make a whole lot of people a lot of money. In fact, so much so that we are so faithful, we're so caught up in the fact that this idea is going to work that we built a jail that is draining us dry. So at this point, I don't know what it's going to take. We've offered our services. For those of you who don't know, I run the Compete Institute of Socioeconomic Policy and Education. We're not just local. I'm a national consultant for Thriving Families, Safer Children, which is the Annie Casey Foundation initiative. So worldwide, I oversee child welfare. They actually pay me to show up and give these numbers and give my ideas when I'm not even heard in my own county.
30 seconds.
I'm sorry?
30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay, 30 seconds. If I could leave you with one thing, I would say that fish rots from the head down, but oil also runs from the top down. You can decide if we want to be that rotten fish, or you can decide if we want to be that anointed body that changes the county and sets the pace for the rest of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments on this presentation? Look at the lights. Commissioner Borgeson? Oh, sorry, Luis. I didn't catch you.
Luis Jimenez, 2709 Dewey Avenue. If you had only one facility and it was the one nearby, the numbers would be concerning. The judges might be sending youths out of the county. Might be sending youth out of the county. But you have two facilities open. I'm wondering that if it's a good idea to open the facility here. I'm sorry, I should know the name by now. I've seen it like multiple times. I didn't bring the agenda down. I could have searched it, but it's the Family and Youth Center. It's the new facility that houses justices, services, judges. So I think it's a good idea to finally open the facility in March. Don't delay the opening. Get to it. Use what you have. I hear your commissioner saying you wasted taxpayer money by building the facility. I think now you're wasting taxpayer money by not opening it. I think you need to open it so at least you know how that's going to work, how it's working, how you can change it, so you have data. Try it out. And I say this based on the fact that I think you already decided you're going to have two facilities. So get to it, open the second facility. And I know this is a population presentation, but I'd like to know is what are the average costs per juvenile, per services? And I've asked that question in committee. And now I'm bringing it forward to the ultimate body, which is the board. Kim, I think she's the one that said it. What you're looking for is the average cost per juvenile, per services. And I'd like to know who can provide that information on it. So that's my question. And I think opening the facility here in March is very important, at least to collect data. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Luis. Commissioner Borgeson? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Larry.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132. I was here back when the decision was made not to let the citizens have any input on the new juvenile justice center. And I'm suggesting that once again, because you don't talk with the citizens before you vote, in a two-way conversation, you can't possibly understand where we're coming from. We don't understand a lot of where you're coming from because you're so busy wrapped up in legalistic language that we don't understand. Even your C attachments on the agendas are difficult to understand for a non-lawyer. This implies that maybe that whole process, if I refer back to LB 1390, it refers to fake information that you people, and they think I'm one of those people that give you fake information about things. You can be arrested as a criminal. Maybe a lot of the information we got all from the day forward was fake information because we didn't get to hear it, we didn't get a vote on it to start with, and everything since has maybe been fake information. My college professor, statistics course, told us statistics are lies and damn lies. Statistics and numbers can be altered, changed to tell a different story, depending on whose story it is and who they want to hear it. Computers are the same way. Somebody has to tell that computer and that voting machine how to think. Oh, no, they don't think. I'm sorry. So whoever the programmer was is the guy behind it, or whoever hired the programmer, whoever inputted it in to create maybe some fake information. But people like us wanting to discuss things in a two-way conversation are being targeted by LB 1390. And you should definitely oppose that and maybe stop lobbying against us on a lot of things. Why are you against me not wanting an inheritance tax?
Larry, let's stay on the topic
Okay,
of
thank
criminal
you.
justice. Thank
Goodbye.
you. Appreciate it. Other public comments? Otherwise, we'll go to Commissioner Borgeson.
I just want to again reiterate that the what Ms. Havakati talked about in terms of the misconception that has been thrown out there about what authority we have in who comes in and who goes out. We have none. But I would also like to talk about the conversation about the disproportionality because the questions I think that are hard questions are obviously there's more youth of color or minorities just in general as we talked about the Asian population increasing, the Hispanic population pretty much staying the same, and the African Americans staying the same. But the question is, again, we don't go out and get them and bring them in. So the question is, where's their first contact? Why are more black children being brought in to the youth center than whites or Native Americans or other? Those are the questions, and they're hard questions. Is there more crime in certain areas than others, or is there a more policing in that area? I don't know, but those are the hard discussions that have to take place. Coming up here and, or even us talking about the population demographics month after month after month isn't going to change the realities of what's happening out there. So again, I have actually talked about having to have those hard conversations, not only with the community, but with others in the system as to why is that happening. And there's no answer. I never get an answer. But if you want to know the answer, those are the questions you need to ask to the proper people you need to ask. And for us, I can see, I don't care what you call it, time of release, length of stay, I don't care. That's a huge problem. And again, we as a board have no authority on decision-making on that. But I think over the years, we have garnered some pretty good relationships with our system partners. And I think we have to, again, continue that and, again, ask those hard questions as to why this is happening. Why is it going back up? Why are more kids being brought in? Why are more kids of color being brought in? Why are they staying there for so long? We can continue to ask the questions. We continue to sit here and, shoot bullets at each other. But I would say, let's have that discussion with the community and with the system partners as to why those increases are happening and why kids are lingering at the youth center for as long as they're lingering. And it's not a jab at anybody, it's an honest conversation as to why. Why? Why is that happening? And you can look at any of the numbers, go back and look at them, but we're above everything that we were before when we were on a good trajectory for things to change.
10
And
seconds.
it seems like we've come full circle, and again, we have no answers. So I would say we need to have those discussions.
Thank you, Commissioner Borgerson. We'll take a very quick round just to maybe in part answer Luis's question. Luis, you wanted to know the cost of providing the service to a youth on the daily cost? And is it the service we provide as a detention center? Okay. I do think we have an actual amount that we can quote. So just to clarify and answer that, Kim, is the direct amount 400 as far as the actual calculated costs, or am I off there?
Nope, you're correct, Commissioner. That was the cost per day, per diem cost for a youth in detention, based upon running our current facility, was $400 a day.
That's the direct cost, not even including some indirect expenses.
That did not include indirect
Yep.
costs.
Yep.
That was strictly direct costs.
Yeah. And, that could lead into discussions of how per diem rates don't even cover the full cost. So we're actually subsidize a lot of that for youth who are in our facility, even when there is a per diem coming in from partners. And so it's a net loss for the county, but that is the actual cost, just to answer your question, Luis. With that, I see no further lights. And this was a presentation, so there's no action today. So we'll move on. We'll move on to the HR committee, which is weekly personnel report as presented. We do have a need for executive session. I believe it was for legal advice and litigation. Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong. And labor as well. So I'll take a motion to go into exec session. Motion by Rogers. Second by Friend. Do a vote.
Motion passes 6-0. Commissioner Morgan is absent. All other commissioners voting yes.